Secret Knowledge is a nonprofit that helps creative people like you get down to business because artists struggle to make it, and talent alone isn't enough. Secret Knowledge presents skills you need to make it here.
I'm glad you guys are here. I'm going to get going with it. We are doing a video tonight, so if any of you are in the witness production program, don't tell me. This is a new workshop we're doing. It's called Secret Knowledge of Pricing and Selling. We, as artists and also musicians, we tend to feel, how to put it, uneasy in that moment of deciding how much something is worth, what to charge for it. And that's chiefly because it's a totally made-up thing. It's arbitrary in many cases. We know that we just took, in the case of a painter, we took these materials and this canvas and we had some sort of an idea, possibly there was a model involved, we don't know. But we went through a process and we made a thing. We know how much maybe it costs to get those materials, and we may have a sense of how long we actually spent start to finish on that work. But in terms of the way that we're looking at the act of doing it, it doesn't feel like driving a taxi cab would, where there's an established rate for the time that you're doing it and the value of it and how good it is and all of that all combined. So I think that that's a part of the source for why it's people have such difficulty when it comes to pricing their work. So here's my advice to you. The first piece of advice is the overarching one for the whole workshop. It applies to everyone. Establish prices. Let's just accept that. Anything you do wherein you go, well, I'm not going to say what that costs, you are skipping over a very important piece of advice, which is that establishing a price for something sets you down the path to being able to sell it to someone much further than anything like a quote or a pay what you will. Anything you can do to remove a question mark from the process of selling something, and in this case the question mark we're removing is, well, I don't know how much it costs, so I don't know if I can buy it because I don't know how much it costs. You have to be kind of absolute about that. Decide what the price is. We'll talk about some ways you can go about deciding that, but commit yourself to deciding on some prices for things. When you're considering what those prices should be, consider the time and materials that are required to create the thing that you're selling, and also what it is that they're really buying. And for visual artists in particular, if it's an original work of art, like an oil painting, something that's a fine art piece, not a smaller craft, let's say, where your goal is to make a bunch of things of this particular sort, but instead where you're creating this painting and like people are going to regard it, and it's a one-off thing. If it's that kind of a work, then the original of that should cost more than $100 to purchase, probably a lot more than that, even if you're new at it. An original work of art, when someone buys that physical thing, you no longer have that thing. It's in their collection. They've got to protect it from their toddlers or whatever it is. It's a piece of your creative history that you're losing some control of. You shouldn't be pricing it the way that you're pricing something when you're just selling how the thing looks, because when someone buys an original work of art, particularly if it's a fine art piece, in some ways they are investing in that item and all it embodies. Beyond just that they want to be able to see what that thing looks like when they look at their wall and how it makes them feel and whatnot. They're actually getting a much bigger piece of you than that. So charge a lot for original works of art that are of that variety. Crafts being a separate thing. Crafts, when we think about crafts, we're creating artistic and designed things which we're planning on creating several of. We're capable of doing a small-scale manufacture of them in some way. It's probably by hand, but if it's a handcrafted thing. But But that's a different challenge than that's a different thing that people are buying than when they're buying the one version of that thing that exists that will likely ever exist. I realize that it's a big challenge when you're starting out as a visual artist, particularly, let's say, as a painter or other fine artist, to place a high premium on your originals. But there are some great advantages for doing it, and there are also some avenues for you to sell things the way you would sell your artwork if you're selling it cheaply without actually selling the original. In particular, you can make lithographs and prints that are of limited edition. Limited edition is a wonderful word. It just means that there aren't an infinite number of those things. And the art world has also introduced this great idea of the signed numbered limited edition, which is where you take a thing that is basically a printed or otherwise reproduced version of an image that you created, let's say through painting, and then you take a pencil or pen and you write sequential numbers on there and then sign it, and suddenly it's got a greater status than if someone just took your painting to Kinko's and put it on the machine. It's like an official one that you graced with your presence. You can sell those using the pricing scheme that you might imagine for a starting out artist, making it be $70, $80 for something that's matted, or even over $100 if you start being well established and it's very limited prints. Just think about reproduction as a means to save yourself a lot of painting work and allow dissemination of the experience of what you've created to people in a way that they're sharing the cost of that work. That's a really good idea. So some examples might be that you might say, if you're getting started, you might say that a particular work that's, yay big, let's say, but nice and something that you truly value as some of your creative output, that might, you might want to be paid $500 for that if you're just starting out and don't feel you have the reputation to sustain a higher price. But if you were to create lithographs of that, signed prints of it, you could sell those for $70, or affordable amounts that lay people, non-collectors of art, could actually reasonably pay for. And I made a point as I was thinking about this particular workshop of going around and looking at what visual artists in Portland are doing. One person I'm particularly impressed with is Sam Roloff, who he's been getting a lot of press this month. But I've met him, and I was really impressed with his process. One of the things he does, incidentally, to market his fine art to collectors, is he documents his process as he's painting and actually puts up in progress pictures of works, as he's going. And he's told me that he gets collectors contacting him through his Facebook page, where they follow that, saying, "Hey, I'm really interested in that one. Let's talk about it, like when it's done," kind of deal. On the marketing side of things, an interesting approach, one that I think is very, it's very now. It's a thing we can do now. You would have to do some kind of a newsletter, I guess, back in the day if you wanted to try and show your process to sell things. But everything's so instant now, you might as well. As terrifying as that is, by the way. He's a very brave man to be able to put his process on display. Another thing that I saw when I was checking on some information from him today was that in addition to referring people to galleries for purchasing his work, he also will rent or lease his paintings. Like, let's say you've got a business that you're decorating while you're in that particular building. You're not going to, you don't want to pay for owning the original investment of that artwork outright. But if the use of it is that you want to have it up, during this time frame, where you have things set up the way you have them, leasing a painting is actually kind of an affordable way to have there be high quality decor in your house. So I was really impressed to see that he has a leasing and renting program going for his work. I thought that was pretty cool. On the lower end of things that you can make out of your artwork that you can sell as products, I'm not saying this is the feel-good moment of the workshop, but it's something to consider. People consume art in a lot of different contexts, not always just by regarding it on their wall over a fine bottle of wine. In many cases, people will enjoy it as sort of an incidental thing, like in a greeting card or thank you note card, or in addition to like a print that you would put up in the place of a painting. You might, if you have a whole body of work, you could create a calendar. If you have 12, or if it's a Jewish calendar, depending on the year, even more. So apparel. These are all things that, depending on the style of art you're doing, you were talking about. Was it your daughter's fiance? That he has a very sort of edgy, almost street style or comic book style to his paintings. Well, for someone with that kind of a visual style, it makes a lot of sense to consider apparel as a medium. So he makes and sells T-shirts of his work. Yeah, well, good on him. High five for that. He gets the seal of approval for that. When it comes to crafts, if you're doing handicrafts, whatever Etsy type product that you're making and selling, strive to make items to sell which naturally appear, like visually appear, to fall into 2 or 3 price categories. And people very often will, when they're evaluating products in front of them, they'll very often sort themselves visually by apparent size, or sometimes intricacy of detail, higher quality materials in certain instances. So, as you're coming up with your line of crafts that you're doing, consider making some that have a similar kind of idea, but are done in a either smaller form or are done in a slightly simpler style, and then 1 or 2 other versions that are of increasing intricacy or scale. I think of the scale thing as being relevant, particularly to the man I spoke with who was making the wooden bowls. He was saying that, some of the little wooden bowls are actually the ones that he thinks of as being, of such high quality, and he was pointing out all of the flaws on every bowl that I was looking at. Not a great idea, if you want to sell them, that is. In fact, in general, try not to be a stickler. We all know that you have a very discerning eye for the thing that you're doing. That's why you're the one that's doing it, right? That's what makes you be the artist or makes you be the musician. You're the person who has cultivated and curated for yourself how to make things be exquisite. As you're moving into the part where you sell things, it's a good idea to at times remind yourself that you're the only person nearby who has that going on, who can see that level of detail. For musicians, performance-wise, you're the only ones who can really hear how when it's quite so perfect versus when it's kind of a similar idea. The people who are buying what you're selling are benefiting, and they're standing in awe at something that they do not understand how to evaluate in the level of detail that you, the person who made it, does. So don't tell them where all the warts are on it. That's not even on my list. I just remembered that that's a thing that keeps happening. But, you guys heard it. I think it's great advice. Here's something really interesting about pricing that I'm here to share with you. We very often will price something for less because for a lower cost, because we think that there are people who would buy it if it's a little cheaper. That isn't really true. There are people who buy things because they're a deal, and they aren't really buying the thing from you. They're just excited about getting away with something. You have customers who want to buy a thing, and they'll buy it as long as it isn't exorbitantly expensive. And the range there is far wider than we think it is. So I'm encouraging anyone who's doing arts or crafts to consider charging more for what you're selling pretty much on a regular basis. Think about that and experiment with it. You may be surprised at how that can impact your sales. You would think that it would reduce the number of people who buy things, and in some cases it might. But in terms of the amount of money that you're actually making, just on a simple arithmetic level, you'll end up making more money for when the people actually buy the thing at the higher rate than you will if you make it really affordable and you have to sell a bunch of them to make it, make the same amount as selling at a higher amount. That's the first half of the advice, and here's the secret part that's kind of cool. People will actually buy things more aggressively when they cost more. They will. We tend to look at the price tags of products that are out there, and we assign greater quality to what we see for sale in front of us, to items that are priced at a higher price. There was an example in a wonderful book that I read, where I get a lot of my favorite secrets from. The book is called Influence. It's by Robert Cialdini, and it's basically a psychology book that's about what are factors that influence people to do things. I'm gonna bring up other things that come from this particular book, but it's a great book to read if you ever want to get a whole bunch of these things. One of the great examples he gives was that there was a set of bracelets that were for sale at a boutique shop that had been priced at, I think it was $20 each, which is a pretty affordable bracelet. I mean, that's a low-cost bracelet from a boutique shop. And they really weren't selling that well. People were passing them up. And they did an experiment where they added a 0 to the price. Not on the wrong side of the decimal. That wouldn't do anything. They multiplied it by 10. So that instead of being $20 bracelets, they were $200 bracelets. And what they found was that they sold out of those bracelets at that price. It was really just people were like, oh, well, here's this nice thing that I can get. I don't want a cheap bracelet, And they were assigning the value of that as far as their purchase choice, based on what that price was. The thing about pricing does not apply, for the most part, when we're talking about objects that have a well-established price in our culture. A very good example would be music sales. I think you could do it if you had a box set of your music, for example. At that point, there's no established price for what a box set of someone's music, if it's extensive, would be. It's something that that tells people, oh, this is okay, this is not okay. But a CD, people know that there's only a few prices that those ordinarily go for, and it depends on how much music's on them and whatnot. I'm not saying this is a rule, but I would think for an EP, meaning a short recording, like $10, and $15 for a full-length CD, and maybe $10 for a download code. That's for a whole album worth. That's pretty standard. A lot of people have there's a lot of models where people do like a pay-what-you-want model. I don't advocate for that, particularly if you're selling music at a live event that you're playing at. I think that you're playing a similar game to the game that artists are playing when they downprice their work, when you're not setting a fixed price for something, because you're creating another question mark for someone, and there's sort of this impetus that you're putting on your customer, which says, how much should you really pay? One instance in which pay what you want works well, I think, is if you do a pay what you want with a set minimum and do it for online sales, particularly ones that are heavily marketed, where there's a lot of traffic that you're driving toward that. Because in that instance, you're giving fans an opportunity to pay more for the thing than the minimum that you're setting. And that's great, because they can say, I feel like I'm helping you out, and I'm also getting this thing back from it. So that's really that's my opinion on that. For musicians, one of the main things that will matter in terms of getting people to purchase your music at a gig that you are performing at, one of the best things you can do is to make absolutely sure that you announce from the stage during the show that you have CDs, T-shirts, stickers, whatever the things are that you're selling for sale, and how much they cost, something cool about the thing. Don't spend a long time on it. Make sure people know exactly where the merch table is, point it out. In an ideal world, they'll know already, but make sure you issue a reminder to them that there is something there that they probably want by the time that you're mentioning it, which is to take a little bit of the show home with them in terms of a recording. So make sure to remind people that you take cash or cards. Very often people just assume that, even though it's 2015 and they use the same technology at the ice cream shop that I can use on my cell phone to take contributions, people still assume that you're not going to have the ability to take a card, and so they'll go, oh, I can almost get a thing, but I don't have the cash. Make sure you let them know in no uncertain terms that that's a thing that they can get, and have some fun with it. I don't make too much of a joke of it that people don't listen, but it's okay to say, and it just so happens we have, because that's a funny joke. Remind people that you play around town, that if you're a person who gigs in the area, and that they can sign up for your mailing list. This is not about selling in that instant moment. It's about growing the awareness of you as a musician. And actually, that advice applies to visual artists as well. If you're giving a show, you said you had a show at what do you call it? Was it a gallery or your place of worship?
At the Hawthorne Theater.
Oh, cool. And so, it's a good idea to have a mailing list so that you can announce to other people when you're doing other shows, because it means that you can tell, gallery owners and things like that you've built a list over the years of such and such a number of people who are interested in your artwork. You're able to mention to them directly, hey, this is what I'm working on. It looks like this. It'll be available probably after this time. We'll see. And come on out and see me and meet me and have a drink. At my next show, it's going to be at so-and-so's gallery. They're now excited enough about my draw to show my work. It's all the same thing. In terms of how to have a mailing list, get a piece of paper and, in the simplest terms, make sure you bring a piece of paper and a pen and like a little clipboard. And, you could design up a little snazzy sign-up thing for your table, but make darn sure that you have it and it's easy to see, and that people are encouraged to do it. Much of the encouragement is actually probably not going to end up coming from you. I'm going to get to who will actually be doing that encouragement in a moment, but because I'm going to encourage you to get help with this, but that comes a little later in this discussion. In general, it's a good idea to have your products or merch be something available at various price points. $1 for something simple like a sticker, $5 if it's your old EP that you're trying to get rid of for some reason or something like that, 10, 15, 20, 50. It's a good idea to have something at those different levels so that people can make choices about what they want to get and they're able to do it. If you have the wherewithal to do it. Not everybody has developed a T-shirt by the time that they're playing gigs. But once you get to a point where you do have T-shirts, it's a really good idea to price them such that they are in a distinctly separate category from a CD. Because if someone's making a choice based on sort of nostalgia, or they're making a choice based on price versus they actually just want the album, the T-shirt's a different choice and it should be making you a lot more money, frankly. It's a great idea if you find yourself in the situation where you have more than one thing you're selling to create special offers. This is one of the reasons why, and this applies to visual artists as well and crafters. why you want to have things at different price levels is that you can combine them in ways that incentivize the sales of the higher priced items, or might clear out old inventory in a way that completists, if in the case of a musician, like a completist might want to have your old album that you don't really care so much about and don't really want to be promoting, but they might buy it in your holiday bundle, for example. And the way that bundling these things tends to work is you add up what the cost, what the retail cost you're selling those things are, and you knock off like $5, something that brings it down to some round number from the price when they're bought together, because that you're getting a little bit more money than you would have been getting, and that you're selling stuff more aggressively, and that people are actually going to be incentivized to buy at all because there's a deal going on, and they've got a chance, a time-limited chance to make, to make some headway in their buying your stuff pursuits that they do. Make the prices very easy to see. If you're doing crafts where you've got 3 different tiers, make it very clear. Like the big ones are this amount, the medium ones are this amount, the small ones are this amount, and if you buy 2 small ones, you can get them for a little bit less, or whatever. If you're going to do that incentive, you can put all that information together, but make it very easy for people to find it so that they don't actually have to ask you, and they don't really have to turn things over, to do it. That they're grouped in a way. If you're this is a musician at a show, bring a bunch of 5s with you and price things so that the change is going to be $5 bills, because it's an easy kind of change to get, and the price structure happens to work well for what we're used to buying music for, and it just saves a lot of headache, at least for people who are buying with cash, because people are going to show up with $20 bills that they just got from the ATM somewhere, and they're going to try and buy your $25 thing with it. And if you don't have a $5 bill, you've basically made it so that you have to have a conversation with them about using their card, which they may or may not be down to do. So yeah, the number of 5s you bring with you can actually limit your sales at a certain point if you don't bring enough of them. Today, before I came out here, because I know that people are giving donations and they often bring larger currency, I was like, oh, I only have one $5 bill and like 2 20s in the little money bag that we bring. So I stopped in at a restaurant and was like, hey, will you change these for me? Because I knew that was a thing that really mattered. Do whatever you can to make sure that what you're selling is visible from like 10 feet away. That we're talking about for like at a merch table. The problem with your merch setup, if you're doing a gig, is that you don't always have a lot of control over that. But one thing you can do is make things appear on the vertical rather than simply being laying flat. The only way anyone can see the CDs you have for sale, for example, if they're laying flat, is if they're literally right up next to the table, leaning over it, and assuming there's any light at all. Which brings me to the next thing. Employ lighting if it's dark. Make sure that the area where your email list is, where your CDs are, that it's well lit so that people can see to go there, and when they get there, they're able to read what's written there. That can be a huge challenge depending on the venue you're playing at. Do anything you can to afford yourself some space to spread out. All of these are ideal advice, meaning you're going to find challenges every time you, particularly as a musician, every time you set up to play somewhere. They're going to give you this little dinky table that isn't going to quite cut it for showing off what you're doing, and it will negatively impact your sales because it's just so tight, and people are not going to be able to really peruse that stuff. So an idea you might consider would be to get yourself like a folding camping table. They fold flat and have like a little handle, and some sort of a modest tablecloth to make that not look bad, and to also cover the things that you might be stashing underneath it, so that that wherever you go, you can set up more table than they're giving you, such that you actually have some space to spread out and sell things. One thing I've noticed when I'm doing merch sales for my partner is that if there's space to spread out, she sells. She sells a lot. If it's like cramped and there's like a bunch of little things next to each other and plus there's snacks or whatever, and you're jammed up next to where people came in to pay, and it's not, any of those factors will basically undermine the sales until such a time as the room has cleared out so much that maybe one straggling person might, at the end of the night, buy something. That's in the case of a cramped sales situation. People need to be comfortable. They need to be able to see that it's there, that there's a friendly person they can talk to. That person isn't jammed up behind the display, so there's enough space to see a human being and see what they're selling next to that. And ideally, something vertical like what the latest CD is, or if you've got your T-shirts or whatever, that those are up in in the vertical plane so they can see that from a distance. But they know that they can walk up there, that they're not creating a bottleneck with the flow of people trying to go get a drink or whatever. So you may need to be a little pushy about relocating where the naturally installed merch spot is at the venue that you're going to. And there's some incentive for that. It's the difference between making some money and making no money. That being that pushy can really earn you some dividends. An old suitcase, a charming old suitcase, makes kind of an awesome portable merch system, provided you get one that isn't too deep and not too shallow, and you use the upright open lid. I guess they call it a lid when it's the part of the suitcase that you open, as sort of a display area for, that's where you would put what the price is for a CD versus what the price for something else is, and where you put the image of the CD that you're that you're promoting. And what's nice about working with a suitcase is that if you're traveling, you can go around with it. They tend to be cramped if that's the only space that you're able to use. But one thing about having a firm-sided suitcase that's sort of squarish is that even if they give you a dinky table, like a little round side table, it's possible, not advisable, but possible to set it up such that you're actually expanding that space, assuming you don't have your own table that you're working with. If you're selling apparel, particularly in a concert setting where there's urgency to selling it because people are leaving, or they're headed somewhere, or there's a line of them and they don't want to wait. Store your T-shirts rolled up in a clear plastic tub and put what the sizes are with painter's tape, the stuff that doesn't leave any gummy residue, right on the tape what that size is, so that you can find the right thing when someone asks for it. They're going to ask for it, and then they're going to come back and want to switch it out with the other size. That happens again and again. And if you don't have a system in place whereby you can immediately grab the thing that they need, it's going to jam up your sales flow, and you'll end up missing out on other people who want to buy things. So that's, kind of a pretty big rundown on merch table stuff. None of that matters if you don't have someone there to sell the stuff. As much as we like to think that the things we're selling just sell themselves, they don't. The people who are there babysitting, and hopefully doing more than that, what you're selling, are the ones that actually end up making those sales happen. And if you're playing a show at the time that people are coming by, you're missing out on sales that you could be making. So it's good to have someone, if you can at all make it happen, who can act as your vendor of sorts while you're doing your job up on the stage. So get a friend. Make sure that they're there before, during, and after your performance. If you know someone who is outgoing, that would be the one to pick. you can help that person out by providing them with a couple of interesting facts to share about the main thing that you're selling. Let me tell you that the reason why I'm good at selling merch for my partner is that I know everything about her. And I know everything that's going on. And so when someone comes up and they're, looking at the thing, I can say, oh yeah, well, that record has like most of the Blue Cranes on it, and a third of Portland Cello Project playing on that thing, or whatever. Some engaging fact that that person might that might really resonate with them. And I find that the people who I share those kinds of facts with are the ones who ultimately buy it. There are some other things that I also say, which I have much later, which I'll skip ahead to, that also cause things to get sold, and that are I find that like I say, people buy things when they're interested in them. So you can share facts about the thing that's being sold. In the case of an artist, you can point out qualities, like or give some insight into the subject matter, or anything personal that is about the person involved, and or the process they went through. People buy things from people, and usually because of that quality of it, that they can identify with that person, or they met that person, or that person seemed interesting in such and such a way. It's a very good reason to buy something. People also buy gifts. I don't know if you've heard of this. People buy gifts, and if you remind them that gifts exist, it is as simple as that. If you remind them that gifts exist, and you postulate that the thing you're selling makes a great gift, they will consider buying it for someone. I mean, it's a really good way to sell something to someone who doesn't want it for themselves, but wants to subject someone else to owning it. That's what, if we're being negative about what gifts are. They think, this would be good for my friend. I mean, you're suddenly opening up the field of, from being about, does that one person see a need in their life for my acrylic painting, or my record, or this hat, or does anyone that person knows and cares about seem like the kind of person that would want that? And you suddenly have a lot more people there, sort of in a virtual way, by opening up that idea of a gift. It's also a good way to sell two of something. I found, like, oh, you just bought the CD, did you? Don't be schmaltzy about it. Like, oh, you just bought the CD, did you? But you say, oh, this makes a great gift if you want to if it's music. If you want to share this great music with someone that you care about, and if you're offering deals on multiple CDs, for example, that's one reason people will do it, because they're planning on giving one away. And you'll very often find people buying CDs that they already own of yours. Oh yes, many, many times this has happened, because they're going to give it as it's Festivus, and it's time to give that CD to their pal in another state. If someone can imagine themselves doing something with what you're selling, very often that will be enough reason for them to purchase it. An example is, like if it's a CD, you can listen to this in your car. I know it sounds stupid. You can listen to anything in your car. But, yeah, merely painting the image of someone enjoying something in a different context, you can't... I will not get in your car. It looks unsafe. But the CD of me can go with you in the car, and you'll be able to hear it. That image of them, listening to it and enjoying it, in that semi-private spot, that works. I mean, people will buy it for that. Or I find it's good to go to sleep to, if it's a relaxing kind of thing. Or this is I actually work out to this. Or I've enjoyed this on my morning commute. Because by the way, in no instance am I ever lying to people about the thing. I try to find authentic things that I know to be true about the thing, and just alert a person to that quality of it. And I'm not saying it's not flies to honey. It's just sometimes that's all it takes. And someone is like, you know what? Yeah, I do like this, and yeah, I think I would like enjoying this. anything to put them into something real rather than just like, you should buy what I am selling, and have it be more about their enjoyment of it. For artwork, it would be, I think of this as living room art, particularly if the issue is that people are like, oh, I'm not a gallery. I'm in a gallery, but I don't have a gallery at home. I've always thought about this being great in a den. Whatever, if that's true, if it's something that you've created where you actually feel like it should be enjoyed in a context, it's great for a second home. That's a great, if you're targeting a particular market. I feel like my winter home is really the one that has the best light for this. What about you? Art collectors are the sorts of people who also have homes to decorate. There's a reason why they're buying art. It's because the walls are too blank when they get there. One of my favorites, when I'm getting people to sign up for my partner's email list, one of the things she does is she says, if you sign up for my email list, you can get a free sticker, which is promotional for her record and says her name on it. And I will tell people that anything from like, you can stick it anywhere, right? You can stick it anywhere. Doesn't that make you feel like, wow, you know what? I can think of some places. I've said, you can stick that on your lunchbox. No one has a lunchbox, but they all remember that that's a thing you used to be able to decorate with stickers. So, put that on your water bottle. Like turn that Nalgene into a music-themed Nalgene. Inequality you can point out of something being applicable, literally applicable to someone else's life or experience is great. And people, it's charming, sure. They know that it's stupid that you're saying that thing. They know that it's also totally true. And I think the image of, in the case of the sticker of like you could stick it somewhere, that just feels good. And so sometimes they'll actually consider signing up for the email list based on the sticker thing, at least in my experience. Let's talk about performing for tips. Artists, think of a way to perform for tips. No, for musicians and other performing artists. Here's the deal. Empty tip jars and other tip conveyances like guitar cases and things, they tend to stay empty. So put some bills in the tip jar of your own in the beginning is the number one advice as far as getting tips to happen goes. There's a reason for this. There's a psychological principle called social proof. And what social proof says is that human beings look to the actions of other human beings to decide how they should behave. You can experience this if you go and stand at the crossing signal for a street where there's going to be some other people, crossing too. And there's always one and then every person there who will be like, I'm from the city, so like I don't even care. Like I just walk when I want to because there's no cars coming, not when the or the little figure guy tells me to, right? Many of you, I'm sure, are that person who does that. Try for a moment on your own not going with that person, and what does it feel like the moment that person starts walking? You instantly feel that you should start walking too, and in fact, even I, who am a stickler for, I like to let the timing of traffic signals work its way into the cosmos. Like I feel like the timing of the universe and good fortune are also tied to just following when I'm supposed to be walking based on the law. Also helps me not to get hit by people careening around bends. Or at least I think it reduces the chances. Anyway, that feeling you're feeling when you see one person and then like a whole crowd of them walking and you try to decide not to do it, that pain inside, it's a low-level pain, which I feel every damn day. No. That experience, that is social proof, like tugging at you. It is just trying to compel you to do what those other people are doing. The same exact thing is at play when it comes to tip jars and tip music cases and whatnot. The reason why you put some money in there is that people will assume, without really thinking into it, very deeply, that some other people came along, heard what you were doing, they knew it was good, and that also it's appropriate for them to put money of roughly some denomination close to what's already in there, within reason, in there too. So if it's like fives instead of like ones, and don't put any quarters in there, because otherwise people will be like, oh yeah, great. But something that shows that there's been a few people who've decided that, and that's the thing to do. That's your first step. If you're playing on a street corner, that's going to be the thing that you had better do. If you want anyone to, if you're busking, that's the way, if you want anyone to contribute. Keep in mind, a tip jar is not a secret ballot box. Brian, I believe you've played at a certain co-op in Sacramento, where they have their own tip jar. I don't know if they had it when you had it, but when I went there, it was like opaque. It was as if they took sort of like a plastic tissue box cover, and like wrote tips on it, and you couldn't see inside what was in there, like as if it was going to afford people privacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we brought our own.
Yeah, good. You brought your own. We brought our own too.
Yeah.
And also some other things happened that made tips get in there. But yeah, glad you brought your own. People need to see the money in there in order for the social proof thing to work. They can't even really just suspect it. They need to see it. It needs to be visible and from a distance visible. Create a very visible location for the tip jar. Put this tip in that tip jar. Make it easy to walk up to. Not right in front of you and not too close to you and your instrument. Raise it up from the floor if possible so that it's easy to be seen. I was watching a group playing at like an event, and they had a tip jar that, at least it was see-through. It was translucent. That was good. But it was like literally right right uncomfortably close to where someone was playing, so that if I wanted to put any money in the tip jar, I would have to get jiggy with that person, in order, like I would have to get a city distance from them in sort of a country situation where, one thing I did for that particular set of performance also was an empty tip jar. They just had a paper in it really deep down that said tips. Actually, it was at the front, if I remember correctly, so that even if someone put tips in it, no one would see it because it was behind the paper that said tips. So I guess it kind of destroyed the translucence of it. I was like, all right, they're playing, I'll help them out. I first of all took a few dollars and put them in. I moved the tip jar out in front of them where someone would feel okay walking up and putting money in and not feel like they were like up in front of the show, per se. Not ideal, but it was still better than nothing. And I moved the thing that said tips so that it was at the back of the jar and up, so that it actually helped make the money stand off from the background. And they started getting tips, like the moment that happened. But prior to that, there had been no tips in there. And I knew that was the reason why, because it's a thing I understand. But think about that when you're playing for tips, because those dynamics really matter. If possible, putting it so that a person can come up and do it really easily is great. And I'm going to give you one more piece of advice. Remember that friend you recruited to run your merch while you're playing? Well, that same friend, that outgoing friend, you should have them go around with the tip jar, physically bring it to the people all around that are attending your gig, at least once for every half hour, 45-minute set that you do. Like if you're doing 2 sets, or if you're doing like a 2-hour show and people are coming and going, it should go around, once, maybe 15, 20 minutes in, and then, about 15 minutes from the end of a 2-hour mega show. Or if it's 2 sets, 45 and 45, with a little break, then have them go around during the first set, and then have them go around toward the end of the second set. And it doesn't feel great because it's depending on the place you're at. Some places where you're at, people are like, oh yeah, I'm just, we can see this is the right thing to do, and they'll do it. There's a wine bar, which I won't name, where people are just really there to be on a date, I guess. But you aren't going to get any tips from anyone unless you have someone going around doing it. So yeah, having that person do it and letting them know that needs to happen in order for you to make money. It doesn't take a whole lot of time out of the show. It is some energy that you're borrowing from your outgoing friend, though. And you should appreciate them in some manner for doing that. Also, from the stage, much like when you're reminding people that you have things for sale, mention that you're performing for tips during your set. It's just a good idea. I mean, you can be pretty relaxed about it, but people tend to assume that musicians are taken care of, that music is free, that they aren't in any way responsible, or the venue is. They might probably imagine that the venue is paying you like real change for what you're doing, unless you let them know that you're performing for tips and that you would deeply appreciate it if they're getting something out of what you're doing, for them to take a moment and make a contribution. That's a good idea. It'll actually feed you to do that.
Can I make an observation?
Please.
I've noticed that in the playing for tips situation, that
Yeah.
if you use the word tips, it conjures up this image of crumpled up dollar bills.
Interesting. What do you use?
Donations.
Oh, sure. Oh, interesting point.
People seem to take that word more seriously.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. You could say that my cap would be glad of a penny or two. I think that the Mary Poppins people established that as a really good. Yeah, I mean, he was basically a tip. He was an artist for tips. Yeah, you can tell people that good luck will rub off if they shake hands with you. It's not true. They'll just get you sick while you're on tour. That is Secret Knowledge of Pricing and Selling, except for the part now, my favorite part, where I answer every question you could possibly come up with. So hit me with it. You're thinking about one.
Yeah.
What you got? What you got, boy?
What if you were trying to market information in the form of art?
Like infographics, you mean?
Yeah, like conceptual illustrations of systems.
Sure. I don't think you fall into a special category if that's the case.
But would you go off time? Would you go off like, because a lot of
Oh.
the work to bring.
No. Well, you're making prints, correct?
So,
Yeah, this is the idea. Some form of a reproduction of the thing that you're creating is what you're actually going to be selling. Yeah, I wouldn't go off of time or off of materials per se. I would go off of make it be a price. Just look at it and say, this is, if it's matted, if it's framed, things like that. When you start getting to a point where you've put in some material into it, or you're going to, you can charge a lot more for those than if it's a simple print. But yeah, I would price those like you would other lithographs.
would you mention that the source of the illustrations came from other people's investigations into these systems? Or is it
Oh, you're asking in terms of marketing it. What's really going to matter to people?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Does the credibility of the information increase its value?
No, I don't think that the information part of it. If people are getting it, you think about, why are people buying it? Are they buying it because they want the information? They want access to the information? I don't think so. I think they're buying it because it looks cool. This is my theory on your potential customers, is that they are buying a thing that you're creating because it looks darn cool. They identify with its complexity. There's something about their personality that, much as your own and mine in some ways, that where they see something done that's technical but still artistic, they like that. They want to surround themselves with that. So I would market it as being art that that's basically for technical folks, geek art,
All right.
so to speak.
Like I bought original prints from an original book that was made of medical illustrations.
Oh,
of
cool.
The open heart. So it was from like 1880 and it still showed like the skin and stuff like that.
Makes a great gift, I bet, in your life.
That's what I did. That's exactly why I got it. So, but I bought it because
Her boyfriend is
it's
a
an
heart
original
surgeon.
print from the original book, the first edition, because this guy was a collector. He was an amazing printer. He had his own lab. I saw him print it out, and it looks amazing. It's framed in my house. But I paid a pretty penny for it because because of where it came from, how cool it was, and that it was amazing print, like the highest quality.
Right, the quality of it, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, people
So I think
do.
it's about, if it has a story, was that what you meant, or?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I think like that's cool, or like, I think it's cool even if you create it, that there's enough history in that, like what does it mean to you, what's the story?
You could say it's on museum quality paper.
Yeah.
Make sure it's on some kind of museum quality paper, but that's a thing people will sell. If you're there selling it, you can offer an insight into what the thing is, but they're not going to buy it solely based on that. Yeah, I mean, you could say it's based on this, or it's influenced by this, or it expresses such and such, just so that they, it's got a name and shape to it, and they can contextualize the thing they're looking at. But in terms of why they're gonna buy it, it's because it's cool and it resonates with them. There's another workshop we do called Secret Knowledge of Clear and Clever Marketing, which is entirely about how do we hone in on those people and how do we communicate with them. There's actually there's a 20-minute video up, and I think we're probably going to be offering that one again one of these days.
March 19th.
Oh, is that true? Good on me.
Oh, yeah.
March 19th. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll be doing that one again. It's the third time I've offered it. But you can also, if you're just want to get the jump on it, you can watch the video on our website. We've had like 1,000 views on that one alone. It's in like the 2 months that it's been up. But yeah, that's a useful, and it's basically four questions you can ask that are not related to Passover. That's a little Jew joke for you. That will help you target your marketing of that artwork you're doing to the people that are likely to buy it. Because not everyone will buy it, but if you identify the folks that will, those people are going to go to it like a country fried euphemism. Thanks, I made that up. Great. Any more questions?
I do.
Hit me.
So I'll have like a bunch of paintings I'm going to show, like let's say 15, and I think before the show coming up, should I frame them or not framing them? If I go super cheap about it, then the frames will be cheap, but at least it's not going to cost me a bunch. But then it's like some places, like, so there's this juried show I've heard about, and they want things framed.
Yeah.
And other places don't care. And I just don't know, like, if it's better to frame it and have it look all nice and ready to go. I feel like
Good question.
that would be better.
It's a really great question. Well, one thing to consider is that there's a thing called frame effect. If you take a frame and you put whatever in it, that thing is suddenly much more special. And I think you're realizing that because that's where your conundrum falls. I feel like I'm the art rabbi in this moment, answering your question. So you have to ask yourself, well, if you can afford to do it and your goal is to sell things, and actually at a price that will sustain you, then framed artwork sells for a lot more money. It's also appraised as far as just noble savages walking in and looking at it. Those savages, those people, are going to think that's great. That's much better than this. Like if it's a napkin that you drew on and then you put it in this frame, they're going to be like, yes, I will buy that napkin and I will put it over my kitchen table where I have other napkins and pins, but that is special because the frame effect.
And then my other thing is,
If you can afford it.
right.
Otherwise, don't.
I've framed things before, like paintings, right? But I didn't get like a legit frame for it that fits the depth of it, and so I've got, so I hand
Anything that will frame it will technically work. By the way,
people aren't gonna like look behind it and be like, oh, that's not hooked in there, like professionally.
I'm saying, depending on the style you're doing and who's buying it,
Yeah.
you may want to go the full route if you can afford to do so, knowing that that frame, that painting with that frame is a thing that is a sellable product to people at a much higher price than cheap frame, and much higher price than no frame. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you can't afford to do it, anything that makes a frame increases the apparent
Yeah.
goodness of the thing.
You could always say like frame not included.
Yeah,
And
that's,
you sell it to them, and then you take
Mhm.
your frame back and you use it again.
That's
yeah.
Oh,
Paint it the same size all the time.
It just gets, it's just the attraction.
Or
It's the,
Then they're like, oh, I see it like
attraction.
they completely finished.
Visualize
Yeah.
I
it.
see it better.
in their
Oh
mind.
yes.
Or-
Do lead people all the way to the what it looks like
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Don't expect them to have any imagination like
Yeah,
we have.
because they're not.
They don't.
Plus, people are very, they may want to reframe it anyway,
Mhm.
and so it's just, I think.
They're probably just going to put it in a vault, a lightless vault.
Or you could have a price with the frame and without the
Yeah.
frame.
That's very
And
often
if
a.
you spent like, $80 on the frame, then you add like $300 to the price.
Yeah.
Right.
And say if you want the frame,
Do that.
it's that much.
Yeah.
Add $250 to the price or whatever.
Right.
Yes.
And then, they don't have to know where you got the
Based
frame.
on that, they can decide whether or not they want to include
Yeah.
the frame.
Right. If they
They're not empowered.
people will very often buy it with the frame because that's the thing that they've seen, and it's they don't want to get into a whole frame
But then you're
process.
like, ha ha, thanks. I just made an extra 200.
You buy Noah
because
a
I
beer.
made it.
How many of you are wondering if I'm going to use that chalkboard? Show hands.
I was kind of hoping.
I haven't decided, but I'll tell you what I am going to do. You guys won't get to see it, but I'm going to make this be my magic chalkboard that has stuff that gets written on it automatically for the video.
Nice.
Secret Knowledge is a nonprofit that helps creative people like you get down to business.